beautiful alien woman was left to die until a human miner found her crashed ship. I guided my shuttle, the Tarnished Edge, toward the docking port of the abandoned terraforming station. The massive structure stood against the starless void of Veros 9's night side, its exterior pitted from impacts, just another routine pickup job. Grab the package, get paid, and most importantly, ask no questions. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic shutter that vibrated through the hull. I checked my sidearm, more out of habit than expectation of trouble. The job had come through Kenzo, and while I wouldn't trust him with my drink, his information was usually solid. Usually, docking complete. External atmosphere registered as breathable but thin, my ship's computer announced in its flat voice. I pulled on my jacket and secured my breathing mask around my neck, ready to use if the station's life support was more degraded than reported. Lock down all systems except emergency protocols. Authorization Marcus 7-4 Echo. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The station's corridor had dim emergency lighting and smelled of old recycled air. My boots clanked on the metal grating as I moved deeper into the station, following the coordinates Kenzo had provided. The abandoned facility felt eerily empty, like it had been hastily evacuated. Terraforming equipment lay where it had been dropped when the company went bankrupt years ago. I rounded a corner and paused. Light spilled from beneath a door that shouldn't have been powered. Voices murmured on the other side, more than the single contact I'd expected. I drew my blaster and approached silently, years of smuggler's caution guiding my movements. The door wasn't fully sealed. Through the gap, I saw not my contact, but a makeshift laboratory. 3 figures in unmarked exosuits huddled around what looked like a medical table. Their backs were to me, but I could see they were focused on something or someone, strapped to the surface. Neural Pathway 7 is still resistant, one of them said, adjusting some equipment I didn't recognize. Increase extraction power by 15%. Any higher and we risk permanent damage to the storage structures, another replied, his voice clinical and detached. The client doesn't care about the vessel, just the data. Proceed. I moved to get a better view and felt my breath catch. Strapped to the table was a being unlike any I'd seen before, humanoid in shape, but with skin like living crystal. The surface pulsed between deep purple and alarming red as they worked, using crude tools that pierced the crystalline shell at points along what I guessed was its head. Brain mining. I'd heard about it in shadowy corners of space stations where the worst kind of deals went down. The extraction of information directly from sentient neural pathways, always fatal for the donor. As I watched, the being's head turned slightly. 2 luminous eyes without pupils somehow found mine through the gap in the doorway. I felt something brush against my mind, gentle but unmistakable. Please. The word wasn't spoken, it simply appeared in my thoughts, accompanied by a wave of fear and desperate hope that didn't belong to me. I had no time to process this because at that moment, an alarm blared through the station, startling everyone, including me. Containment breach detected in neural extraction protocol, an automated voice announced. Emergency lockdown initiating in 30 seconds. The 3 men looked at each other in obvious panic. Grab what data we've extracted, and move out, the leader ordered. We can't be caught here. But the specimen, one started. Leave it. Syndicate will find another. As they rushed to disconnect equipment, I weighed my options. My package was visible on a storage shelf across the room. I could grab it and be gone before the lockdown. Simple, clean, profitable. But those eyes stayed with me, and that plea lingered in my thoughts. Lockdown initiating in 15 seconds. The smugglers had already fled through another exit, carrying cases of equipment and data storage but abandoning their victim. I cursed under my breath and made my decision, bursting through the door and crossing to the table in 4 long strides. The being's crystalline surface flickered weakly as I approached. Up close I could see the extraction equipment had penetrated in multiple places, connecting to points beneath the crystal exterior. Lockdown initiating in 10 seconds. I holstered my blaster and pulled out my utility knife, slicing through the restraints that held the crystal being to the table. The material was lighter than I expected as I carefully lifted the body into my arms. Its surface was warm against my hands, vibrating slightly. Lockdown initiating in 5 seconds. I turned and ran for the exit, hearing the first of the emergency bulkheads beginning to seal behind me. The package and my payment were forgotten as I sprinted through the corridors, the crystal being cradled against my chest. Its light was fading, the vibrant colors dimming to duller shades. A bulkhead ahead began to lower. I dove beneath it, feeling it brush my back as I slid through to the other side. 2 more corridors, 1 more security door. The alarms continued to wail as I pushed my body to its limits. I reached my airlock just as the final station-wide lockdown initiated. The door to my shuttle sealed behind us with seconds to spare, cutting off the sound of metal barriers slamming into place throughout the station. Emergency launch protocol, I gasped to the computer, laying the crystal being gently on the deck. Get us out of here, now. The ship's engines roared to life. Docking clamps disengaged with a violent jerk, and the tarnished edge shot away from the station into the darkness of space. Only when we were safely in the void did I look down at my unexpected cargo. The crystalline body had dimmed to a pale blue, barely illuminating the cargo hold. I knelt beside it, unsure what to do for a being so unlike myself. Slowly, those luminous eyes opened again, focusing on me with obvious effort. I am Veshila, a soft voice whispered, the sound somehow both within my ears and inside my mind. Thank you for saving me. Her eyes closed again as she slipped into unconsciousness, leaving me alone with the realization that I'd just stolen what was clearly valuable property from what was likely a powerful organization. I'd left without my package, without my payment, and with a whole cargo hold of new problems. I kept one eye on the navigation console and the other on my unexpected passenger. The crystalline being, Veshila, hadn't moved since collapsing hours ago. Her surface glowed with a faint blue pulse that I hoped meant she was still alive. The extraction equipment had left small dark indentations across her head. The shuttle's engines ran steadily as we drifted through the outer reaches of the Veros system. I'd set no specific course yet, just put distance between us and that station. My thoughts raced through potential safe harbors, contacts who wouldn't ask questions, and exactly how much trouble I'd brought upon myself. I checked the med scanner readings again. They made no sense. The device kept alternating between unknown physiology and signal interference. Useless piece of junk. A subtle change in light drew my attention. Veshila's body brightened, the pale blue deepening and changing to an amber that made warm patterns across the bulkhead. Her eyes opened, those strange luminous orbs without pupils somehow focusing directly on me. She pushed herself upright on the makeshift medical cot I'd arranged, movements deliberate and careful. "You're awake," I said, suddenly aware of the weapon at my hip and wondering if I should have secured her somehow. Too late now. Yes. Her voice had that same quality I remembered, simultaneously audible and inside my head. "You are Marcus. I sensed your name when you carried me." I took a step back, hand instinctively moving closer to my blaster. "Stay out of my head." Her color changed slightly, amber darkening. "I apologize. Telepathic contact is involuntary during physical touch." I did not probe deliberately. That didn't make me feel better. I pulled a cargo container closer and sat down, keeping some distance between us but close enough to react if needed. "I want answers. Who are you? Why were those men drilling into your brain? And what kind of trouble have I just invited aboard my ship?" Veshila's body straightened, her glow stabilizing. "I am a Threscian archivist, 3rd rank. My neural structure naturally contains and encrypts historical records spanning approximately 3,000 standard years." I stared at her. "You're a living database." That would be an oversimplification, but not entirely inaccurate. She touched one of the indentations on her head, her light dimming briefly. The extraction would have destroyed my consciousness while transferring portions of the encrypted data. And these records, they're valuable enough to kill for. Some contain knowledge considered too dangerous for unrestricted access. weapons designs, extinction-level technologies, failed societal experiments. She looked at me directly. I was entrusted to safeguard this information until proper ethical frameworks evolve for its use. A high-pitched alarm cut through the air before I could respond. The proximity sensors. I jumped to my feet and moved to the console, checking the readouts. We've got company. Unknown vessel on approach vector. I punched up the identification protocols. Scratch that. Registered to Helix Syndicate. Veshala's color changed rapidly to a vibrant red. They were the ones who arranged my abduction. Helix Syndicate. You're sure? Not common criminals or low-level information dealers. Helix had connections stretching from corporate boardrooms to government intelligence agencies. I accelerated the shuttle, plotting an evasive course. How did they find us so quickly? Veshala rose from the cot, moving with more stability now. She approached the navigation console, stopping just short of touching it. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the interface. I hesitated, then nodded. Her crystalline fingers made contact with the console. Immediately the display flickered and expanded, sensor range tripling. Data streams multiplied across the screen. Information I didn't even know my outdated systems could access. She pointed to 2 additional signatures, barely visible at the edge of our enhanced range. "They're coordinating, moving to box us in." "How are you doing this?" I asked, even as I adjusted our course to avoid the trap. "They're tracking my neural signature," she explained, her exterior changing to anxious green patterns that rippled across her body. "Each Threshen has a unique energy profile. Mine is particularly distinct due to what I contain." The shuttle shuddered as I pushed the engines beyond safe parameters. A dense asteroid field appeared ahead, dangerous but offering cover. "Hold on to something," I warned, diving the tarnished edge into the swirling rocks. I threaded between massive boulders, relying on instinct and years of smuggling experience. Behind us, the pursuit vessels followed, their superior engines closing the gap. "They're locking weapons," Veshala warned, her hand still connected to the console. I yanked the controls hard, narrowly avoiding a fragment the size of a small house. A flash of energy streaked past our port side. They were firing despite the risk of setting off a chain reaction in the field. "These aren't recovery specialists," I muttered. "They're here to clean up loose ends." The shuttle rocked violently as a glancing hit caught our rear section. Warning lights flashed across the console. "Primary drive stabilizer damaged," the computer announced flatly. "Power reduction recommended." I ignored the advice, pushing us deeper into the field where the larger pursuit ships would have more trouble maneuvering. Another energy blast clipped an asteroid near us, shattering it into deadly fragments that peppered our hull. For 10 tense minutes, I navigated blind turns and narrowing passages, using the asteroids themselves as shields. The pursuit ships fell behind, unable to match our smaller profile in the tightest corridors. Finally, we emerged on the far side of the field, sensors showing no immediate threats. I cut power to non-essential systems, and let us drift into the shadow of a larger asteroid, hoping to mask our heat signature. The sudden quiet felt oppressive after the chaos. I ran diagnostics on the damaged drive stabilizer, cursing at the results. "We're alive, but not for long if we can't make repairs." I slumped in my seat, the adrenaline crash hitting me hard. "The primary drive will fail completely if we push it much further." I looked up at the navigation charts, calculating distances. Talos Station is about 8 hours at reduced speed. It's neutral territory. Questions aren't asked if your credits are good. Veshala stood silently, her body now a subdued mix of blue and green. The connection to my console had enhanced our chances of survival, but also highlighted just how valuable and dangerous my passenger might be. "I should have left you," I said, immediately regretting the words as her light dimmed noticeably. Her eyes met mine, vulnerability clear despite their alien nature. "Your choice was unexpected, but you have my gratitude, for whatever that may be worth." Something in her grateful look made me look away first. I wasn't used to being thanked. Most of my work involved packages, not people, certainly not people who could read my thoughts with a touch. I can help repair your ship, Veshila offered after a moment, her tone tentative but determined. My archives contain extensive engineering schematics, including some for this model of drive system. I raised an eyebrow. You've got technical manuals for a 30-year-old Meridian cruiser inside your head. Her color changed to something almost like amusement, a lighter blue with ripples of yellow. I have technical specifications for most vessels produced in the last several centuries, including modifications considered less than legal. Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. Well then, Archivist, let's see what you can do once we reach Talos. I set our course and reduced power to minimum requirements, hoping the subtle approach would keep us off sensors. As we drifted toward the distant station, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stepped into something far bigger than a simple rescue. The Helix Syndicate didn't give up easily. And something told me they weren't the only ones who would come looking for my crystalline passenger. The tarnished edge limped into Talos Station's docking area, the damaged drive stabilizer making the final approach shakier than I would have liked. The space station's countless lights reflected the commerce that thrived in this lawless corner of space. Docking protocols initiated, the computer announced as the automated systems took over. Warning: primary drive stabilizer requires immediate attention. I shot a glance at Veshila. Her crystalline body changed between cautious amber and nervous green. I've never entered a human station before, she said, her eyes fixed on the approaching structure. The archives contain extensive information, but experiencing it is different. Well, you won't be experiencing much if someone recognizes what you are. I rummaged through a storage compartment and pulled out a weathered hooded cloak. Put this on. Keep your head down and stay close to me. Veshila took the garment, examining it curiously before wrapping it around her body. The material draped over her crystalline body, concealing most of her features except for the soft glow that emanated from beneath the hood. How's that? She asked. Still glowing. Can you turn that down? Her light dimmed noticeably, though a faint illumination remained. This is as much control as I can maintain. My exterior responds to emotional states. Then try to stay calm. I checked my blaster and tucked it into its holster. Talos doesn't ask questions, but that doesn't mean we won't get unwanted attention. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic groan, and I felt the usual shudder run through the ship. After cycling through the airlock, we stepped into the controlled chaos of Talos Station. The main concourse bustled with activity, traders hawking questionable goods, maintenance crews repairing ancient infrastructure, and beings from a dozen different species conducting business no one wanted documented. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, machine oil and the peculiar blend of foods from various worlds. I kept Veshila close as we navigated through the crowds. Most paid us no attention, but a few curious glances lingered on the hooded figure beside me. A pair of security officers, hired muscle rather than legitimate law enforcement, watched us pass with mild interest before returning to their conversation. We need parts first, I muttered, steering us toward the lower markets. Then a repair bay where we can work without an audience. The parts dealer, a grizzled human woman with more mechanical augmentations than original body parts, barely looked up from her inventory when we approached her stall. Drive stabilizer for a Meridian cruiser, mid-range model, I said, placing a credit chip on the counter. Plus whatever else is on this list. She glanced at the chip, then at my list. Half now, half on delivery to your bay. These aren't easy components to find for that ancient ship of yours, Marcus. You said the same thing last time, Dara, and somehow you found them within an hour. Her mechanical eye whirred as she focused it on me. Times change. More patrols in the outer sectors. Harder to salvage the good stuff. Her eyes moved briefly to Veshila. New partner. Temporary arrangement, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Bay 17. 1 hour. We continued through the market, gathering smaller supplies I couldn't trust Dara to provide. Veshila remained silent beside me, though I noticed her head turning slightly as she observed everything around us. The crowds thinned as we moved into a less trafficked section. That's when I noticed the figure watching us from beside a nutrient dispensary. Tall and cloaked like Veshila, but with visible turquoise crystalline features showing beneath their hood. They made no attempt to hide their interest, eyes fixed directly on us. "We're being watched," I whispered, casually changing our direction. 3 o'clock, another of your kind. Vashila's head turned slightly. Her body tensed beneath the cloak, a soft gold glow briefly brightening before she controlled it. "A Thresian traitor," she confirmed quietly. "4th rank by the markings. They've recognized me. Hostile, unknown. But they will approach us. It would be suspicious to avoid them now." Sure enough, the Thresian was already moving toward us with determined strides. I kept my hand near my weapon, as they blocked our path in a quiet alcove away from the main thoroughfare. "Archivist Vashila," the Thresian spoke, their voice carrying the same dual quality as Vashila's, both audible and somehow present in my mind. "Your survival brings relief to many." Vashila stepped forward slightly. "You know me. All Thresians know the signature of a 3rd-rank archivist." The traitor inclined their head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "I am Mevlok, trade facilitator for the outer systems." I kept my expression neutral, but my mind raced. If all Thresians could identify Vashila on sight, our disguise was even more useless than I'd feared. "We should find somewhere less exposed," I suggested, scanning the corridor for unwanted attention. Mevlok nodded. "Wise precaution. News of your abduction has spread through 3 systems: the Helix Syndicate, the Research Collective, and several private interests have posted substantial rewards for information." The Research Collective. Vashila's light pulsed with what I was beginning to recognize as surprise. "They claim to be allies of Thresian archivists." "Claims and actions often diverge," Mevlok replied. "Their official statement indicates they seek to ensure your safety, but their agents' behaviors suggest other motives." A station announcement blared overhead, giving me a moment to process this information. If the Research Collective, whoever they were, had turned against Vashila, her options for sanctuary were dwindling. "We need to move," I said. "I've arranged Repair Bay 17. We can talk there." Mevlok stepped aside. "I will not accompany you further. My presence would only draw additional attention." They reached inside their cloak and handed Vashila a small crystalline object. "A secure frequency should you require assistance from your kind." Their hands touched briefly during the exchange, and I noticed a momentary pulse of light between them, some form of communication I couldn't perceive. With a final nod toward me, Mevlok turned and disappeared into the crowd. "What did they tell you?" I asked as we resumed our path toward the repair bays. "That I should trust you," Vashila replied, her voice softer than before, "and that I should beware those who claim to protect knowledge while seeking to exploit it." The repair bay was a cramped, dimly lit space with grease-stained walls and outdated equipment. Perfect for our purposes, secluded enough to work without scrutiny but not so isolated as to draw suspicion. I paid the attendant extra to ensure privacy and disabled the bay's monitoring systems as soon as we were alone. Dira delivered the parts with her usual efficiency, giving Vashila a curious glance but asking no questions. The door locked behind her with a satisfying clunk of old mechanics. "We have 4 hours before anyone gets suspicious about a prolonged repair," I said, laying out the components. "Let's see if your archived schematics are as good as you claimed." Vashila lowered her hood, her crystalline body illuminating the dim repair bay with soft blue light. She approached the disassembled drive stabilizer I'd removed from the ship. "This model has a design flaw in the primary resonance chamber," she stated, examining the damaged component. "The manufacturer corrected it in later versions but never recalled the original units." I raised an eyebrow. "You can tell that just by looking at it?" "The archives contain not just the official specifications but also engineer notes, maintenance records, and performance evaluations across 17 colonies." She picked up one of the new parts. "With modifications to the intake valve and recalibration of the resonance frequencies, we could improve efficiency by 32%. For the next 2 hours we worked side by side. I handled the physical repairs while Vashila guided me through modifications I'd never have attempted without her expertise. Her knowledge was uncanny. Several times she stopped me from making connections that would have created compatibility issues, redirecting me to alternative approaches. "The auxiliary power coupling should connect here," she instructed, pointing to a junction I would have overlooked. It creates a redundancy that the original design lacked. I reached for the coupling at the same moment she moved to demonstrate. Our hands met over the component, her crystalline fingers brushing against my skin. The connection formed instantly, not like a shock but more like falling into warm water. My vision blurred, then cleared to reveal information flowing through my consciousness. Technical specifications expanded in my mind's eye, complete with evolutionary design changes and performance metrics across decades of use. I understood not just how to repair the drive stabilizer but why each component functioned as it did, how the energy flowed through the system. Simultaneously, other images flashed through my awareness, a massive crystalline structure buzzing with stored knowledge, the weight of responsibility, centuries of solitary purpose. Emotions that weren't mine washed over me, wonder at new experiences, fear of capture, growing trust in a human smuggler who'd made an unexpected choice. Just as suddenly, I glimpsed memories from my own past, a young boy watching ships depart a mining colony, longing to escape the crushing pressure of underground tunnels. The cold emptiness of a dormitory after losing both parents to a tunnel collapse. The first time I stole a security pass to sneak aboard a supply transport. With a gasp, we both pulled back. The connection severed as our hands separated. I staggered backward, catching myself against the workbench. Vashila's body had changed to a bright pink that pulsed rapidly. She stepped away, her movements jerky and disoriented. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. My voice harsher than intended, as I tried to process the afterimages, still spinning through my mind. "I apologize," she stammered. The pink deepening. Physical contact creates neural pathways. I should have been more careful. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The flood of technical knowledge remained, settling into my understanding as if I'd studied drive systems for years. "Is that how you share information among your kind?" "Yes, though usually with more control." Her color gradually returned to a more neutral blue. "The exchange is not typically so comprehensive." We finished the repairs in awkward silence, both of us carefully avoiding contact. The modified drive stabilizer looked nothing like standard Meridian equipment, but I understood, thanks to the lingering effects of our connection, exactly how it would function. The improvements would give the tarnished edge capabilities far beyond factory specifications. After reinstalling the components and running initial diagnostics, we returned to the shuttle. The computer confirmed the modifications were functioning at 143% of original parameters. Better than even Vashila had predicted. Night cycle had begun on the station by the time we finished. I prepared 2 portions of synthesized protein from the shuttle's food processor, not appealing, but nutritionally adequate. We sat across from each other in the small galley area, the silence between us growing uncomfortable. "So," I finally said, pushing my half-eaten meal aside, "want to explain what happened back there?" Vashila looked up from her untouched food. Her exterior had settled into a steady blue with occasional ripples of pink. "Thresians share information through neural connections," she explained. "It's how we communicate complex concepts, transfer historical records," and she paused, the pink becoming more prominent. "Establish personal bonds. Like some kind of telepathy. More structured than that. We control what information flows between us. Or we should." She set down her utensil. "What you experienced was unfiltered access to level 3 memories. And that means information sharing has levels among my kind. The first is surface knowledge, facts, directions, practical data. The second contains professional expertise and communal history." She hesitated. "Level 3 contains personal experiences, emotional context, individual perspectives. It's considered quite intimate." The implication hung in the air between us. I felt heat rising to my face and looked away. "So I basically read your diary without permission," I muttered. "And you read mine." "Not intentionally," she replied quickly. "I've never connected with a non-Thresian before. The boundaries function differently." I was about to respond when the proximity alert chirped. I moved to the console, checking the external sensors. "Security scan in progress," the computer reported. "Targeting crystalline molecular structures." Vashila moved beside me, her color changing to alarmed red. "They're looking for me," I activated the external cameras. A security team was moving methodically through the docking area, carrying detection equipment. They were still several bays away, but moving in our direction. Time to leave. I began the launch sequence bypassing several safety protocols. We haven't finished all the diagnostics, but that drive stabilizer better work. Vishila took the co-pilot seat without hesitation. The modifications will hold. Trajectory calculations. Anywhere but here for now. I engaged the engines, feeling the improved response immediately. Docking clamps releasing in 3, 2, 1. The tarnished edge detached smoothly, thrusters pushing us away from the station before the main engines engaged. On the rear cameras, I could see the security team running toward our empty bay, detection equipment flashing urgently. I plotted a rapid course away from Talos, pushing the new drive system harder than I would normally risk with untested modifications. The shuttle responded beautifully, accelerating with a smoothness I'd never experienced from the old engines. Once we'd cleared the station's patrol zone and no pursuit registered on our sensors, I allowed myself to relax slightly. The vast emptiness of space surrounded us, stars stretching into infinity. Vishila sat quietly beside me, her crystalline body now a calm, steady blue that softly illuminated the cockpit. "Where will we go?" she asked after several minutes of silence. I studied the navigation charts, considering our limited options. Helix Syndicate, Research Collective, private interests. We had enemies in every direction. I know some remote outposts where we could lie low. I offered, places that don't show up on standard charts, but they're temporary solutions at best. Vishila turned toward me, her luminous eyes reflecting the starlight. "I could teach you to access my knowledge deliberately," she suggested, her voice hesitant, but determined. "Not just random connections like before, but controlled exchanges. It might help us survive." The memory of our accidental connection lingered, the rush of information, the strange intimacy of sharing thoughts and feelings. Part of me recoiled from the vulnerability it required, while another part recognized the tactical advantage her knowledge could provide. "How would that work?" I asked, surprising myself with my willingness to consider it. "It requires focus, clear intention." She held up her crystalline hand, stopping just short of offering it to me. "And trust, on both sides." Trust was a commodity I rarely traded in, yet here I was considering allowing something direct access to my thoughts. Before I could respond, the navigation system chimed with a completed calculation. The moment passed as I turned my attention to plotting our course through the void, away from the station and the forces hunting us. But Vishila's offer remained between us, unanswered as we accelerated into the darkness of space. The memory of our accidental touch lingered, both unsettling and fascinating. I focused on the navigation console, plotting a preliminary course. "The Cygnus Research Collective," I said finally. "You mentioned they might provide sanctuary." Vishila's exterior changed to a cautious amber. "They've worked with Threzan archivists for decades. Their facilities are secure, and they have protocols for handling sensitive knowledge. And they won't just lock you up and drill into your brain like the last guys. The collective maintains strict ethical standards." Her tone carried certainty, but I noticed a flicker of doubt move across her surface. "They understand the responsibility that comes with accessing historical archives." I nodded, not entirely convinced, but lacking better options. "Cygnus Sector it is then. 3 standard days if we push the modified drive." The coordinates locked into place, and the shuttle's engines buzzed with renewed efficiency. Vishila settled into the co-pilot seat, her luminous eyes looking at the starfield ahead. "The offer still stands," she said quietly, after several minutes. "I could teach you to access information deliberately. It would be safer than accidental connections." I looked at her briefly before turning back to the controls. "Let me think about it." 2 days into our journey, I found myself reconsidering her proposal. The vastness of space offered little distraction, and my thoughts continually returned to the rush of knowledge I'd experienced during our accidental contact. Access to her centuries of technical expertise could mean the difference between survival and capture. Vishila had given me space, respecting my reluctance. She spent hours in quiet meditation, her body glowing softly in the corner of the shuttle's small living quarters. Sometimes I caught her watching me with those strange luminous eyes that somehow conveyed emotion despite their alien appearance. "All right," I said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. "Show me how this works." The intentional connection. Her color brightened immediately to an eager blue. "You're certain?" "Not really," I admitted. "But we need every advantage we can get." We moved to the center of the living quarters. Vishila sat cross-legged on the floor, her body casting colorful light patterns across the shuttle's interior. I sat across from her feeling awkward and exposed. "The process requires focus," she explained, her voice calming. "When our minds connect, direct your thoughts towards specific information you seek. Think of it as a question. That's simple. For basic information, yes. The difficulty comes in maintaining boundaries." A ripple of pink briefly colored her exterior. "As you experienced before." I rolled up my sleeves, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "What do I do?" "Close your eyes. Focus on a single question, something concrete." She extended her hand, palm up. "When you're ready, place your hand on mine." I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. What question would be most useful? Technical specifications seemed safest. The tunnel networks near the Cygnus sector, I decided. I need to know if there are unmapped passages we could use. Good. Specific and practical. I heard the approval in her voice. "Now hold that question in your mind as we connect." With another steadying breath, I placed my hand on hers. The connection wasn't the overwhelming flood I'd experienced before. This time the information was more organized, centered around my question. I received navigational data spanning centuries. I saw the formation of quantum tunnels through the Cygnus Nebula, dust clouds, routes that had appeared and disappeared over time as stellar winds moved the surrounding matter. I also sensed emotions alongside the data. Vishila's fascination with human resilience, her fear during the abduction, her desperate hope when she first saw me through the laboratory door. I felt her growing trust in me, her admiration for my decision to save her despite the danger. I pulled my hand back, breaking the connection. The influx of information settled into my mind, more organized than before, but still intimately tied to Vishila's emotional perspective. That was, I searched for words. More controlled, she finished for me, her color a pleased shade of blue. But still deeper than I intended. Your mind processes differently than a Thresian's. I stood, my legs unsteady. I need to check something. At the navigation console, I input the new coordinates gathered from Vishila's archives. The computer processed the data, revealing a network of quantum tunnels not marked on any standard charts. Some had formed recently enough that even smugglers wouldn't know about them. "This changes everything," I muttered, recalculating our route. "We can cut our travel time by half and avoid the main transit corridors where they'd expect us." Vishila moved beside me, watching the new route unfold across the screen. The information was useful then. Beyond useful. I glanced at her with newfound appreciation. "What else do you have in that crystal head of yours?" Her exterior brightened with what might have been amusement. 3,000 years of technological evolution, cultural histories, and scientific development across 17 star systems. No wonder everyone wants to drill into your brain. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Vishila's color darkened to a troubled indigo, and she turned away. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "Bad joke. It's an accurate assessment." Her voice was quiet. "Knowledge has always carried risk. That's why archivists exist, to safeguard information until it can be used responsibly." I adjusted our course to the nearest quantum tunnel entrance, realizing the burden she bore. Not just information but responsibility. The modified engines responded beautifully to the new parameters, and the shuttle accelerated toward the coordinates. The proximity alarm blared before we could continue our conversation. "Multiple vessels detected," the computer announced. "Pursuit course." The sensor display showed 3 ships emerging from light speed behind us. Their configuration matched Helix Syndicate enforcement vessels, heavily armed and faster than my shuttle, even with its modifications. "They found us." Vishila's exterior flashed alarmed red. "How?" I had no time to speculate. "Hold on." I pushed the tarnished edge into a steep dive, banking hard toward a dense asteroid field. The pursuing vessels split formation, attempting to cut off potential escape routes. They were waiting for us, I realized, pushing the engines beyond safety limits. This isn't random. They knew exactly where we'd be. A warning shot streaked past our port side, close enough to make the shields flicker. I zigzagged between larger asteroids, using their mass to block sensor locks. The shuttle groaned under the strain of rapid direction changes. The quantum tunnel entrance is still 17 minutes away at current speed. Vashila reported, monitoring the navigation display. We won't last 5 minutes under direct fire, I countered, scanning for options. Her hand reached toward the console. May I? I nodded, and she established connection with the ship's systems. Immediately, the sensor range expanded, revealing a narrow passage through the asteroid field that led to a pocket of dense radiation, hostile to sensors but navigable with proper shielding. The radiation will mask our signature, she explained. The shuttle's shields can withstand it for approximately 12 minutes. Long enough to lose them and circle back to the tunnel entrance, I concluded, adjusting our course. The next few minutes stretched into tense eternity as I threaded the shuttle through impossibly tight spaces between tumbling rocks. Behind us, one of the pursuit vessels clipped an asteroid and spun out of formation. The remaining two continued the chase but fell behind as we entered the radiation cloud. Warning lights flashed across the console as radiation levels rose. The shuttle's shields held, but power reserves drained rapidly. Shield failure in 9 minutes, the computer warned. I pushed forward, deeper into the radioactive haze, until the pursuing ships disappeared from our compromised sensors. After 7 agonizing minutes, I turned back toward the quantum tunnel entrance, taking a wide arc to avoid our previous path. Shield failure in 2 minutes, the computer updated. Just ahead, the quantum tunnel rippled, a distortion in space barely visible to the naked eye. I aligned our approach vector and pushed the engines to maximum thrust. Hold on. Tunnel transition is always rough. The tarnished edge shuddered as we crossed the threshold. Reality warped around us, stars stretching into infinite lines before disappearing completely. For 3 heart-stopping seconds, all systems failed, leaving us in darkness illuminated only by Vashila's softly glowing body. Then, with a violent lurch, we emerged on the other side. The shields failed completely as radiation from the tunnel transition overwhelmed the remaining capacity. I ran a quick system check. Minor damage to the secondary power couplings. We're otherwise intact. Vashila's color gradually changed from emergency red to a relieved blue. That was remarkably skillful piloting. That was too close, I corrected, setting the shuttle on autopilot while emergency systems repaired the shields. They shouldn't have found us, not that quickly, not that precisely. We both fell silent, considering the implications. Minors later, as we shared a simple meal of reconstituted protein packs, the question could no longer be avoided. Someone's tracking us, I said finally, pushing my half-eaten food aside. Either they placed a tracker on the shuttle at Talos, or they're tracking my neural signature, Vashila finished. Her exterior had darkened to a troubled indigo. Can they do that? Track you across interstellar distances? Vashila set down her utensil. Not typically, no. Only sophisticated Thresian technology could isolate an individual neural signature at such range. We both understood what this meant. You think the research collective is involved, I said quietly. She nodded, her body reflecting the shuttle's dim lighting. I've been considering this possibility since our escape from the station. The equipment used during my abduction was advanced, similar to devices the collective has developed for studying Thresian archivists. I thought they were supposed to be your allies. They were. They are. They are. Uncertainty rippled across her surface. But the knowledge I safeguard, certain sections are restricted even from them. I leaned forward. What exactly are you protecting that's worth all this trouble? Vashila's exterior darkened further. extinction-level technologies, weapons that could destabilize stellar cores, methods of consciousness transfer that could render biological bodies obsolete. She turned to me. Certain knowledge is too dangerous. I was entrusted to protect it until humanity reaches sufficient ethical development. And who decides when humanity is ethically developed enough? It's not a matter of deciding, but of observing. When species develop safeguards that match their technological capabilities, when power balances prevent unilateral destructive action. Her voice softened. Your species has remarkable potential, Marcus, but you've barely survived your own technological adolescence. I wanted to be offended, but her assessment wasn't wrong. Human history was littered with destructive applications of each new technology we discovered. So what does the research collective want with this knowledge? I don't know, she admitted. But if they've allied with the Helix Syndicate, their intentions cannot align with Thresian protocols. I pushed back from the table, unsettled by the magnitude of what we faced. Not just criminals or mercenaries, but potentially one of the most respected scientific organizations in human space. We need to reconsider our destination, I said. Vashila nodded slowly. Yes, if my suspicions are correct, the collective facility would not offer sanctuary but captivity. I know some places off the charts, abandoned mining outposts, dead space stations, not comfortable, but secure. For how long? Her question cut to the heart of our dilemma. They will not stop searching. I had no answer. Sleep eluded me that night cycle. I lay on my narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling, mind racing through escape scenarios, each less promising than the last. After 2 hours of restless turning, I gave up and made my way to the cockpit. Vashila sat in the co-pilot's seat, her body illuminating the small space with soft blue light. She stared out at the stars, seemingly lost in thought. Can't sleep either, I asked, dropping into the pilot's seat. Thresians don't sleep as you do, she replied. We enter contemplative states during which our archives reorganize and integrate new experiences. Sounds more efficient than dreaming about falling off cliffs or showing up naked to important meetings. A ripple of what I now recognized as amusement passed through her exterior. Dreams serve important neurological functions for humans. Your unconscious mind processes emotional experiences and consolidates memory during REM cycles. I smiled despite our situation. Is there anything you don't know about? Many things. Her tone grew wistful. Experience differs from knowledge. I understand the neurochemical processes of human laughter, but I've rarely heard it. I know the principles of terraforming, but I've never shaped a world. Something in her voice made me turn toward her. Her face caught the starlight, creating light patterns across the cockpit. What's it like? I asked. Living for centuries, carrying all that knowledge. She seemed surprised by the question. Isolating, sometimes. Archivists are honored among Thresians, but we exist somewhat apart. Our neural structure requires distance to maintain data integrity. You're alone even among your own kind. Not entirely alone. We have connections, relationships, but they must be carefully managed. Her color deepened to a darker blue. My knowledge complicates personal bonds. I understood isolation better than most. Years of smuggling had taught me to keep relationships transactional, to avoid attachments that could become vulnerabilities. What about before? I asked. Before you became an archivist, I was very different. Her exterior brightened slightly. More impulsive, curious about everything. I explored extensively, volunteered for first contact teams, studied other species' art forms. What changed? I showed aptitude for neural storage. The existing archivist for my sector was reaching capacity. She gestured to herself. This role is not assigned lightly, but it required extensive preparation and transformation. You volunteered to become a living database. I volunteered to serve my people by preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. A complex pattern of emotions rippled across her surface. The isolation was an adjustment. We fell into comfortable silence, watching the stars. Here, in the quiet darkness of the cockpit, Our differences seemed less significant than our shared experience of solitude. "What about you?" she asked, eventually. "How does one become a smuggler in the outer systems?" "Nothing noble about my story," I replied with a shrug. "Mining colony kid. Parents died in a collapse when I was 14. Stowed away on a supply ship rather than end up in the corporate orphanage. Learned to fly by bribing cargo pilots with stolen goods. Worked my way up from there. Your adaptation to challenging circumstances shows remarkable resilience." I laughed softly. "That's a fancy way of saying I was a survivor. Did what I had to." "Survival is not insignificant," she said quietly, "especially when pursued by individuals with significantly greater resources." The similarity to our current situation wasn't lost on me. I'd always managed to stay one step ahead, find the angle, spot the escape route. But this felt different, bigger, with stakes beyond my own survival. "We'll figure something out," I said, not entirely convinced. Veshila turned toward me, her luminous eyes on mine. "Yes, we will." I reached for the navigation controls at the same moment she moved to adjust her position. Our hands brushed accidentally. The neural connection formed immediately, gentler than before but no less intimate. This time, no specific question guided the exchange. Instead, memories flowed between us. My clearest recollection of sunrise over the mining colony's mountain range. The one beautiful thing from my childhood. Her memory of floating in a threshed sea surrounded by soft light and melodic vibrations. More memories followed, moments of peace we'd each experienced. A hidden waterfall I'd discovered during a supply run to a jungle world. Her first view of a double-star system from a Threshen observation vessel. The quiet satisfaction I felt after completing a difficult repair on my shuttle. Her joy at deciphering an ancient text from a long-extinct civilization. The connection felt different. Not an exchange of information but a sharing of experience. When we finally separated, the feeling lingered, a warm resonance between us. Veshila's exterior had changed to a soft gold color I hadn't seen before. The glow intensified around where our hands had touched. "This is how Threshens begin courtship," she whispered, her voice carrying a note of surprise and embarrassment. "Sharing peaceful memories, moments of beauty." My heart rate accelerated. "I didn't know, neither did I, that it would happen this way with a human," she admitted. "The neural compatibility is unexpected." I looked at her body, so fundamentally different from my own biology. Despite the growing connection between us, uncertainty nagged at me. How could this work? What shape could a relationship between such different species possibly take? "I should check the engine diagnostics," I said, breaking the moment. "Make sure that quantum tunnel transition didn't damage anything else." Disappointment flickered across her exterior, but she nodded. "Of course." I spent the night cycle tinkering with the navigation systems. A routine task that required just enough focus to keep my thoughts at bay. When I finally returned to the cockpit, Veshila sat motionless, her crystalline body emitting a soft blue glow that had become a comforting presence in the shuttle's confined space. "The quantum tunnels will take us within range of Meridian Waypoint," I said, keeping my tone casual. "We need supplies, and I have a contact there who might have information." Veshila turned toward me. "Your emotions are conflicted." I looked at her skeptically. "I thought you couldn't read my mind without touching me." "I don't need telepathy to observe micro-expressions," she replied. "Your species communicates much through unconscious signals." "Great. So I'm an open book." "Hardly." A ripple of amusement moved across her surface. "You're quite guarded. But last night's connection has left residual sensitivity." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I focused on the controls, checking our trajectory toward the next quantum tunnel. Mayas. Over the next 6 days we fell into an unexpected rhythm. The immediate threat of pursuit had diminished after we disappeared into the quantum tunnel network, allowing us brief moments of relative security. Each day we practiced neural connections, deliberate ones now with clear boundaries and purposes. "Focus on the specific information you want to access," Veshila instructed during our third session. Imagine it as a file or document you're searching for. I sat cross-legged opposite her in the shuttle's small living area, less awkward than during our first attempts. Engine schematics for dual-phase quantum drives, I decided, might be useful for future modifications. She extended her hand, and I placed mine atop it without hesitation. The connection formed more smoothly now. Technical specifications flowed into my mind with remarkable clarity. I saw three-dimensional models of drive systems evolving over decades, each improvement building on previous designs. The information settled into my understanding immediately. When we separated, I immediately moved to the engine compartment and implemented modifications that increased our fuel efficiency by 22%. "You're a natural at this," Vashila observed as I finished the calibrations. "Most non-Thrasians find directed neural access disorienting." I wiped engine grease from my hands. "I've always been good at taking what I need and leaving the rest behind." Her exterior briefly flickered with something I couldn't identify. "Yes, I've noticed that quality in you." On the fifth day, our practice session took an unexpected turn. We'd established a comfortable routine, and perhaps that led to complacency. "Show me secure routes through the Eridan sector," I requested, taking her hand without the usual mental preparation. The connection formed, but instead of navigational data, I found myself immersed in memories. Her memories. A vast crystalline structure filled with thousands of Thrasians, all connected in complex networks that pulsed with information exchange. Amidst this collective, Vashila stood apart, her position as archivist, marked by distinctive patterns etched into her surface. I felt her isolation as if it were my own, the weight of responsibility that separated her from casual connections, the carefully maintained distance her role required. Other Thrasians approached her with reverence but rarely with familiarity. Knowledge flowed to her, but personal bonds remained constrained by protocols and formal interactions. The memory shifted to a ceremony, her installation as an archivist. The procedure was both painful and transformative, as her neural structure was expanded and modified to accommodate the vast archives she would carry. Through it all, she maintained composure, accepting solitude as the price of her purpose. I pulled away, breaking the connection. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to access those memories." Vashila's exterior had darkened to a deep indigo. "The fault is mine." As our connections deepen, maintaining boundaries becomes more challenging. "You've been alone, even among your own kind." She turned her head. "Archivists serve a purpose that necessitates certain limitations." Before I could respond, she reached for my hand again. "Now I've seen your isolation. It's only fair you see mine." The connection resumed, but this time my memories surfaced. A younger version of myself, trusting a partner on a smuggling run who abandoned me during a security raid. Another flash, a woman I'd cared for who sold information about my routes to arrival. More betrayals followed, each teaching the same lesson: attachments were vulnerabilities. When we separated, silence hung between us. We'd seen too much of each other to pretend indifference, yet neither of us knew how to acknowledge what was growing between us. "We'll reach Meridian Waypoint tomorrow," I said finally. Returning to the safety of practical matters, my contact should be expecting us. Meridian Waypoint grew from humble origins as a refueling station into a sprawling hub of questionable commerce and even more questionable characters. The maze-like structure extended from a central asteroid, artificial gravity decreasing the further one ventured from the core. After docking in one of the less monitored bays, I helped Vashila with her disguise, a hooded cloak and gloves to conceal her crystalline nature. "Keep your head down," I instructed. "Meridian has no official law enforcement, which means everyone's looking out for profit. You'd fetch a high price to the right buyer." "Your concern is noted," she replied, a hint of something almost like teasing in her voice. Her exterior glowed a confident blue beneath the concealing fabric. We made our way through crowded corridors, passing merchants selling everything from exotic spices to clearly stolen technology. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, cooking food, and the distinctive metallic scent of weapons fire that never quite dissipated from certain sections. Kenzo operated from the back room of an establishment called the Stellar Drift, part tavern, part information exchange, and occasional weapons dealer depending on the current management's preferences. I'd known him for over a decade, and while I'd never fully trusted him, his information was usually accurate, when properly compensated. The tavern buzzed with the usual mix of species and professions, traders sharing drinks with mercenaries, pilots negotiating with potential clients, information brokers whispering in shadows. I guided Vashila to a corner table with a clear view of both exits and signaled for service. "Quiet," I instructed her. Kenzo's paranoid on the best days. A server delivered 2 glasses of something vaguely alcoholic without being asked. Standard procedure: pay for drinks whether you wanted them or not. 20 minutes later, Kenzo's unmistakable figure appeared from a back room. He spotted me immediately, his cybernetically enhanced eye glowing faintly blue as it scanned the area around our table. "Marcus, my old friend." His booming voice carried across the room despite the obvious attempt to appear discreet. "Rumors of your demise were apparently exaggerated." He dropped into the chair across from us, his bulk making the furniture creak in protest. Though his face maintained a jovial expression, his enhanced eye continued to scan methodically. "Need to keep a lower profile, Kenzo," I muttered. "Just here for supplies and information. Always business with you." He signaled for stronger drinks. "Never time to celebrate the fact that Helix Syndicate has a rather substantial bounty on your head, or that the Tarnished Edge was reportedly destroyed during a pursuit through the Veros system." "Exaggerated," I repeated. "What's the word on Syndicate movement near the Cygnus sector?" Kenzo's eyes shifted to Vashila, who had remained silent beside me. "Aren't you going to introduce your companion?" "Just a passenger. Transport job." His cybernetic eye whirred softly as it focused on her cloaked figure. The joviality in his expression faltered momentarily. "Interesting passenger," he remarked, his tone suddenly too casual. Given recent bounty postings, I kept my expression neutral. "What bounties?" Kenzo leaned back, watching Vashila with new intensity. 3 different factions have substantial rewards for crystalline cargo matching her description. The Helix Syndicate, of course. Some private collector offering obscene credits, and most interestingly, he paused for effect, the Cygnus Research Collective. They seem particularly motivated. Vashila's surface changed to agitated red beneath her cloak, briefly visible before she controlled it. "Is that right?" I maintained an unconcerned tone while sliding my hand toward my concealed blaster. "Any specific details?" "Oh, the usual." Kenzo waved dismissively. "Extremely valuable research subject. Ethical handling required. Authorized recovery personnel only." His gaze fixed on Vashila. "But the unofficial channels tell a different story. The collective's directive authorizes recovery by any means necessary, with a bonus for intact neural structures." The cybernetic eye focused directly on her hood. "I wonder what makes you so valuable. Something to do with that crystalline composition, perhaps." The methods of extracting data from Threshen neural pathways have become quite sophisticated recently. A cold realization settled over me. Kenzo had already identified Vashila, and his casual mention of bounties wasn't a warning, it was negotiation. He was calculating his options, whether turning us in would be more profitable than whatever I might offer. "How much for supplies and safe passage information?" I asked, trying to gauge his intentions. "For you, the usual rates." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though current market conditions might necessitate adjustments." The tavern's atmosphere had shifted almost imperceptibly, certain patrons repositioning themselves, conversations becoming more focused in our direction. Vashila's hand found mine beneath the table. The briefest neural connection flashed between us, just enough to share urgent information. "The research collective's director personally authorized my abduction," her thoughts conveyed. "He's already contacted them. 3 minutes until their agents arrive." I didn't question how she knew this. Instead, I gripped my glass and surveyed our options. The main exit was already covered by 2 figures who hadn't been there earlier. The service entrance would be watched as well. "You always were transparent, Kenzo," I said, rising slowly. "Credits first, loyalty second. Business is business, Marcus." He spread his hands in a gesture of false regret. The collective's reward would keep me in luxury for a decade. Nothing personal. Never is. I lifted my glass as if in a toast, then flung the contents directly into his cybernetic eye. The liquid caused an immediate short circuit, sparks flying as Kenzo howled in pain. I flipped our table toward the nearest watchers while drawing my blaster. "Service corridor," I shouted to Vishila over the erupting chaos. She was already moving, surprisingly agile as she slipped between startled patrons. I fired 2 shots at the ceiling, causing the ancient lighting system to shower sparks across the room. The resulting confusion gave us precious seconds as we ducked into the narrow service passage. Alarms blared through the station as we raced toward our docking bay, taking circuitous routes through maintenance tunnels to avoid pursuit. My familiarity with Meridian's layout kept us one step ahead, but security protocols were already activating, blast doors closing, scanning systems powering up. We reached the tarnished edge moments before the docking bay's emergency lockdown initiated. I slammed the entry panel as we tumbled inside, the airlock sealing behind us with seconds to spare. "Launch sequence now," I shouted to the computer, bypassing standard protocols as I threw myself into the pilot's seat. The engines roared to life as external clamps released. On the security feed I could see armed figures entering the bay just as we pulled away, their weapons firing uselessly against our shields. We accelerated hard, pushing through Meridian's defensive grid before they could fully activate. Within minutes we'd reached the jump point and disappeared into the quantum tunnel network, leaving pursuit far behind. Only when the immediate danger had passed did I notice the shallow burn across my shoulder where a shot had grazed me during our escape. Vishila removed her cloak and approached, concern evident in her rapidly shifting colors. "Your injury requires treatment," she said, reaching for the medical kit. "It's nothing." I waved her off, still processing Kenzo's betrayal. Even expecting it, the reality stung. "We need to discuss where we go from here." She applied a healing patch to my shoulder despite my objection. "The research collective cannot be trusted. Their director Yuna personally authorized my abduction. You saw this in Kenzo's mind. He received the transmission directly from her. She claimed I had stolen restricted research and needed to be recovered for the safety of multiple systems." I laughed bitterly. "No wonder they're hunting you so aggressively. Can't have living proof of their lies wandering around. We require sanctuary." Vishila moved to the navigation console. "Perhaps my people." "Your people," I interrupted, frustration boiling over. "The same ones who've made no effort to find you, who left you isolated as their historical database. We can't trust them any more than the collective." Her exterior flashed angry red. "The Threshen Council would never permit exploitation of an archivist." "Really? Then why haven't they come looking for you? Face it, Vishila, someone gave you up. Someone knew exactly where you'd be and when." Her colors darkened to a troubled indigo. "You're suggesting betrayal from within the Threshen hierarchy." "I'm suggesting we trust no one but ourselves." I stood wincing at the pain in my shoulder. "Everyone has a price. Kenzo proved that today, not everyone." Her voice quieted, colors shifting to a deep blue tinged with gold. "You had the opportunity to leave me. Multiple times. You chose otherwise. That was different, was it?" She stepped close. "Why did you save me, Marcus?" "The real reason." I turned away, unwilling to examine my motivations too closely. "We need to plot a new course." "You're avoiding the question." She reached for me, her crystalline hand stopping just short of contact. "I've shared my memories with you. I've seen yours. What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid of making decisions based on feelings instead of survival." The words burst out louder than intended. "Connections are vulnerabilities. Kenzo just proved that again." "Not all connections." Her hand completed its journey, touching my arm. The neural link formed instantly. Not the controlled, directed exchange we'd practiced, but something raw and emotional. Fear flowed between us, my terror of attachment after so many betrayals, her dread of capture, and having her consciousness destroyed. Beneath that, confusion about what was developing between us. A human and a crystalline being so fundamentally different. And deeper still, something neither of us had named. A connection that transcended the neural link, a recognition of kindred isolation, of understanding that went beyond words or even memories. When we separated, the silence between us felt different, charged with acknowledgement of what we'd both felt. "There's another option," I finally said, my voice rough with emotion. "A place where neither your people nor mine could find us." Hope flickered across her surface, gold ripples breaking through the blue. "What place?" "It's not on any chart." I turned to the navigation console, inputting coordinates from memory. "And it's risky. We'd have to pass through territory even smugglers avoid." "You trust this alternative more than established sanctuaries." "I trust what I can control." I finished entering the coordinates, the route appearing as a complex path through unmapped regions. "This place has been my contingency plan for years. Nobody knows about it except me." Vashila studied the course I'd plotted, her exterior gradually brightening to a determined blue. "The quantum tunnels near the Carina Nebula collapsed decades ago according to my archives." "Your archives are 3 centuries old," I countered. "The tunnels reformed 20 years ago, but it's not in any official charts. Too unstable for commercial traffic, too hazardous for military patrols, but passable for a skilled pilot with nothing to lose." I met her luminous gaze. "Exactly." For a moment we stood in silence, the weight of the decision hanging between us. Everything about this plan defied logic. Trusting unmapped quantum tunnels, heading toward an unmapped sanctuary, protecting a being whose value made her the most hunted entity in multiple systems. "When do we depart?" she asked finally. "Now." I engaged the engines, setting course for the Carina Nebula. No more scheduled stops, no more contacts. From this point forward, we trust no one else. Vashila moved to the co-pilot seat, her crystalline body casting colorful light patterns across the controls. "Then we trust each other," she said quietly. I didn't contradict her. Perhaps that was answer enough. The tarnished edge cruised through the silence of deep space, our course set for the unmapped edges of the Carina Nebula. 4 days had passed since our narrow escape from Meridian Waypoint, and with each passing hour, the scanner picked up more pursuit signals converging on our position. They were hunting us from multiple vectors now, a coordinated effort unlike anything I'd encountered before. I studied the navigation console, tension building between my shoulders. 3 research collective vessels approached from the Cygnus direction. 2 Helix Syndicate enforcement cruisers cut across our flank, and an unidentified ship, sleeker and faster than the others, maintained a steady pursuit from our rear quadrant. "They're boxing us in," I muttered, adjusting our course for the 5th time in as many hours. Vashila stood beside me, her crystalline body changing between cautious amber and worried green. "The modified drive cannot withstand another extended high-velocity burn. We won't need it." I pulled up the detailed star charts I'd programmed with my own annotations, routes and passages known only to the most desperate smugglers. "We're almost there." Ahead, the brilliant gases of the Carina Nebula painted spectacular colors across our viewport. Most ships gave the volatile stellar nursery a wide berth, unstable energy fields, unpredictable radiation bursts, and gravity wells that could trap an unwary vessel for eternity. But beneath that chaos lay opportunity for those who knew where to look. I tapped a section of space that appeared empty on standard charts but showed a faint distortion in my modified scanner. There, the quantum tunnel network. Vashila leaned closer, her exterior pulsing with anxious yellow light. "That cannot be correct. My archives indicate those passages collapsed decades ago during the Carina supernova event." "Your archives are 3 centuries old," I countered, setting the approach vector. "The tunnels reformed 20 years ago, but it's not in any official charts. Too unpredictable for commercial traffic, too hazardous for military patrols, but navigable for a skilled pilot." She looked at me, barely. I didn't sugarcoat it. "I've only used this route twice. Both times nearly killed me. But our alternatives are dwindling fast." The scanner chimed an urgent warning. The unidentified ship had accelerated, cutting our lead by half. Their energy signature matches advanced Thresian technology, Vashila observed, studying the readouts. Not standard research collective equipment. The implication hung between us. Someone from her own kind was helping our pursuers, confirming my earlier suspicions of betrayal within the Thresian hierarchy. Veshula's color darkened to troubled indigo. How could they do this? Archivists are sacred to our culture. Everyone has a price, I said, accelerating toward the tunnel entrance. Or a reason. The nebula grew larger in our viewport, its swirling gases hiding the quantum distortion that marked our escape route. To most scanners, it would appear we were flying straight into a deadly radiation cloud. They're slowing, Veshula reported, monitoring the pursuit ships, recalculating their approach. They think we're committing suicide. I allowed myself a grim smile. Let's hope we prove them wrong. As we closed on the hidden entrance, I powered down non-essential systems and diverted energy to shields. The quantum tunnel's unpredictable energy fields would wreak havoc on our electronics. Shut down all external communications and passive sensors, I instructed. Anything that could be affected by quantum fluctuations. Veshula worked the controls with surprising dexterity, her crystalline fingers dancing across the console. The ship darkened around us as systems went offline, one by one. I can help stabilize critical systems during transit, she offered. Through neural connection. I glanced at her. We'd been practicing controlled information sharing through touch, but never during a crisis situation. That could be dangerous. If we lose focus, the risk of system failure without my assistance is greater, she interrupted. I can parse data faster than your computer, especially during quantum distortion. She was right. We had no room for hesitation. Do it, I decided, extending my hand while keeping the other on the controls. Her crystalline fingers interlaced with mine, and the neural connection happened instantly. Unlike our previous exchanges, this link felt sharper, more functional, focused entirely on the task at hand. I could sense Veshula's presence in my mind, but instead of memories or emotions, she channeled pure data analysis. The tunnel entrance appeared before us, not visible to the naked eye, but revealed through Veshula's enhanced perception as a subtle ripple in space. I adjusted our approach vector with microscopic precision based on calculations flowing through our connected minds. The pursuing ships had begun to accelerate again, realizing our true destination. On the rear scanner, I watched the unidentified Thresian vessel surge forward, closing rapidly. They've identified the tunnel. Veshula's voice sounded both aloud and through our connection. They're attempting to intercept before we enter. Too late, I whispered as the tarnished edge crossed the threshold. Reality warped around us. Stars stretched into infinite lines of light, then vanished completely. The shuttle shuddered violently as conflicting gravitational forces pulled at its structure. Warning lights flashed across the console faster than I could process. Through our connection, Veshula filtered the cascade of system alerts, prioritizing critical failures and dismissing false readings generated by the quantum distortion. Together we made adjustments that would have been impossible for either of us alone. Her processing the quantum effects, me translating that understanding into piloting adjustments. Behind us the pursuing ships hesitated at the tunnel entrance, unwilling to risk the chaotic passage. Only the Thresian vessel ventured a few kilometers inside before retreating, its more sophisticated sensors apparently warning of the danger. They'll seek alternate routes, Veshula informed me, her thoughts flowing directly into my consciousness. This grants us approximately 40 hours before intercept becomes possible again. The tunnel stretched before us, a twisting corridor of quantum possibilities. Unlike stable passages, this network changed constantly, pathways appearing and disappearing as subatomic particles phased between states of existence. For 20 tense minutes, we navigated the unpredictable labyrinth. The neural connection allowed perfect coordination. Veshula's calculations translated instantly into my piloting corrections, without the delay of verbal communication. It felt like having another part of myself monitoring systems, an extension of my consciousness working in perfect harmony with my actions. Then, halfway through the passage, disaster struck. A sudden quantum surge overwhelmed our shields, and the primary power system failed completely. Emergency lights flickered once, then died, plunging the shuttle into total darkness. Except, it wasn't total. Veshila's crystalline body glowed with soft blue light, illuminating the cockpit enough for me to see the unresponsive controls. Life support on auxiliary power, she reported through our connection. Estimated failure in 12 minutes. We need to restart the primary drive. I released her hand and moved toward the engine access panel, breaking our connection. Without the neural link, I immediately felt its absence. Veshila followed, her glowing body providing enough light to work by. I pulled open the access panel and began the emergency restart sequence. The quantum fluctuation has fused the primary power coupling, I discovered, examining the damaged component. We need to reroute through the secondary system. The secondary system cannot handle the load, Veshila countered, examining the schematics. It would burn out within minutes. Minutes might be enough to get us through the tunnel. I reached for the toolkit, and Veshila's hand found mine again. The neural connection started again immediately. What happened next was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Rather than communicating information or sharing memories, our minds synchronized completely. We moved in perfect coordination, anticipating each other's actions before they occurred. Her understanding of the theoretical principles behind quantum drives merged with my practical experience. My knowledge of the tarnished edge's unique modifications complemented her comprehensive technical specifications. We barely spoke aloud. We didn't need to. Her hands passed me tools before I reached for them. I completed circuit modifications as she calculated energy distributions. Time seemed to compress around us, the urgent countdown of failing life support somehow less pressing than the perfect rhythm of our shared work. When the final connection was made, I felt our combined satisfaction flow through the link. The engines came back to life with a low-sound primary power restored through a configuration neither of us would have devised alone. I looked up from the access panel, suddenly aware of how close we stood in the confined space. Veshila's exterior had changed to a soft golden glow that cast warm light across the shuttle's interior. Our hands remained connected, the neural link still open between us. "I've never connected this deeply with anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her crystalline surface shimmered with intricate patterns I now recognized as profound affection. Not even among my own kind. Something had changed between us. The barriers I'd maintained, the pragmatic distance I'd insisted upon since rescuing her, had dissolved during our shared crisis. The connection that had begun as practical information exchange had evolved into something far more profound. I found myself drawn closer to her, my free hand lifting toward her face. "This is probably a terrible idea," I murmured. "Many significant discoveries begin that way," she replied, her exterior brightening as she leaned toward me. Our faces drew closer, both of us hesitant about physical compatibility yet unable to resist the pull between us. When our lips finally met, the sensation was unlike anything I could have imagined. The neural connection exploded into a cascade of shared consciousness. Every barrier between our minds dissolved. I felt what she felt, the strange new sensation of physical contact so different from Threshen interaction, the emotional surge of connection after centuries of isolation. She experienced my wonder at the cool crystalline touch that somehow carried warmth, the unexpected rightness of a kiss that should have been alien. More startling was the physical manifestation, where our skin met. Veshila's crystalline body briefly merged with mine, her luminous essence flowing beneath my surface like liquid light. When we finally separated, both breathless and disoriented, faint patterns remained across the back of my hand, delicate crystalline traceries that shimmered with a subtle glow matching Veshila's. What just happened? I stared at my hand in amazement. The shuttle shuddered around us, breaking the moment as we emerged from the quantum tunnel into normal space. Through the viewport, an unfamiliar star system appeared, blue-white primary star orbited by at least 3 planets visible to the naked eye. No pursuit signals registered on our newly functioning scanners. We moved back to the cockpit, still processing what had occurred between us. Veshila studied my hand, where her essence had left its mark, her expression a mixture of wonder and concern. "I didn't know that could happen," she whispered, her exterior cycling through colors I'd never seen before, iridescent patterns that seemed to contain all possible hues simultaneously. Neural bonding is common among Thresians, but physical manifestation with another species should be impossible. I flexed my fingers, feeling no discomfort despite the strange markings. "Is it dangerous?" "Not dangerous," she said slowly, "but unprecedented. I have no reference for this in my archives." A laugh escaped me despite the gravity of our situation. "Something the living database doesn't know." "I'm flattered." Her exterior flashed briefly with amusement before settling into that same golden glow. "There is a vast difference between theoretical knowledge and experience, Marcus." The way she said my name sent a strange warmth through me. I turned back to the navigation console, partly to focus on our immediate safety, and partly to process the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "We should be safe for now," I said, scanning the uncharted system. "This region isn't on any standard charts, and it will take them time to calculate our exit trajectory from the tunnel." Veshila moved beside me, her presence both comforting and distracting. "Where are we?" "About 3 light-years from our destination." I pulled up the coordinates I'd memorized years ago, my ultimate contingency plan. One more short jump should get us there. And what awaits us? I hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. After what we'd just shared, holding back seemed pointless. "A place I purchased anonymously through layers of shell corporations 5 years ago. A facility where you might find more than just safety." Her curiosity radiated through her changing colors. "What kind of facility?" "One built specifically for research and data storage," I replied. "One where you might not have to be just a living archive anymore." Hope illuminated her features, but uncertainty lingered in her voice. "You've had this planned since before we met." "Not this exactly. I adjusted our course for the final leg of our journey. I've always needed a last resort, somewhere to disappear if things went catastrophically wrong. Now we both need it." Veshila studied the crystalline patterns on my hand, then looked at me. "What happens now?" "Between us?" The question hung in the air, impossible to dismiss yet equally difficult to answer. Whatever had developed between us transcended conventional relationships. Human and Thresian, physical and crystalline, smuggler and archivist. None of the usual categories applied. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'd like to find out." Her exterior brightened with that now recognizable golden glow. She reached for my marked hand, and I met her halfway. This time, when our fingers interlaced, the connection felt like coming home. Our hands remained interlaced as the tarnished edge cruised through the uncharted system. "Tell me about our destination," Veshila said, her exterior glowing with that golden light I'd come to recognize as affection. I brought up the navigation display with my free hand, showing her a small rocky moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches of the system. Nothing remarkable to casual observation, just another lifeless satellite among thousands in this sector. "It started as a private research outpost for one of the major corporations," I explained. "When the funding dried up, they abandoned it rather than pay for decommissioning. I purchased it through 5 different shell companies, about 5 years ago." "Your emergency escape plan," she observed. "Everyone in my line of work needs a final contingency." I zoomed in on the facility's schematics. It was built to house 30 researchers, with full life support, power generation and defense systems. Most importantly, it has an isolated secure data vault designed for classified research storage. Veshila's interest visibly intensified. "A data vault? What specifications?" "Quantum-locked storage arrays, isolated from external networks, with environmental controls that would make most military installations jealous." I brought up the detailed plans. The corporation was paranoid about industrial espionage, and now it belongs to you. "To us," I corrected, surprising myself with how naturally the word came. "If you want it to be." Her exterior briefly pulsed with surprised pink before settling back to golden hues. Through our connection, I felt her contemplating the implications. The knowledge I carry must be preserved, she said finally. If something happened to me, I understood her concern. The archives she carried weren't just information, they were history, culture, technological advancements that could benefit or destroy depending on who accessed them. You could share knowledge on your terms, I suggested. Not as a living library others can exploit, but as the curator deciding what should be accessible and when. Hope flickered across her surface. You would help me do this. I'm pretty decent with hardware, I said with deliberate understatement. And I have a vested interest in keeping both you and your knowledge safe now. I glanced at my hand where her essence had left crystalline traces. The marks had neither faded nor caused discomfort. If anything, they seemed to enhance our neural connection, making it easier to maintain without concentration. One day left until we reach the outpost, I noted, checking our trajectory. We should prepare for arrival. The facility's been dormant for years. The moon grew larger in our viewport as we approached, its barren surface revealing no signs of habitation to casual observation. Perfect camouflage for a secret facility. I guided the tarnished edge into a degrading orbit, using the natural radiation from the nearby gas giant to mask our approach from potential pursuers. There, I pointed to a barely visible distortion in the rocky landscape. Concealed docking bay. Vashila leaned forward, her exterior cycling through analytical blue patterns. Impressive. The structure is almost perfectly integrated with the surrounding terrain. Corporate paranoia has its benefits. I transmitted the encrypted access codes I'd memorized years earlier. Let's hope the automated systems still recognize these. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with glacial slowness, a section of the moon's surface retracted, revealing a dark opening just large enough for the shuttle. Atmospheric readings, I asked, hovering at the entrance. Minimal oxygen, Vashila reported from the sensor display. The facility maintains vacuum preservation protocols when dormant. I guided the shuttle inside, the external lights illuminating dust-covered landing pads and maintenance equipment. The docking bay door closed behind us with reassuring solidity, sealing us off from the void outside. Life support activation will require manual intervention, I noted, studying the readouts. The automated systems are in hibernation mode. We donned environmental suits from the shuttle's emergency store.
Line a standard model.
Vashila's requiring modifications to accommodate her crystalline shape. Her luminosity provided welcome additional light as we made our way through the airlock and into the dark facility beyond. Our footsteps bounced in the silence, disturbing dust that had settled undisturbed for years. The main corridor stretched before us, branching into various sections of the research outpost. Everything remained precisely as the last occupants had left it. Workstations with notes still displayed on screens. Personal items collecting dust on desks. Equipment positioned mid-project. It's like a museum, Vashila commented, her voice both audible and present in my mind through our neural link. Her exterior glowed brighter, illuminating our path as we moved deeper into the facility. Central control should be this way. I indicated a corridor branching to our right. We need to reactivate the primary systems first. The control room sat at the heart of the facility, a circular chamber filled with dormant consoles and the skeleton crew of maintenance robots that had faithfully preserved the outpost functionality during its abandonment. I approached the main terminal, brushing away years of dust. Let's bring this place back to life. Vashila placed her hand beside mine on the activation panel, her neural assistance making the complex startup sequence trivial. Together we worked through the initialization protocols, routing power from the facility's fusion reactor to essential systems first. With each passing minute, the outpost awakened around us. Lights flickered on section by section. Air processors buzzed as they began cycling breathable atmosphere through the ventilation system. Dormant computers activated, running diagnostics on connected systems. After an hour of intensive work, the environmental warning on my suit indicated the atmosphere had reached breathable levels. I removed my helmet, taking the first cautious breath. The air tasted slightly metallic. Life support stable, Vashila confirmed, checking the readouts. Power at 65% capacity. Defense systems booting at minimal functionality. She removed her own helmet, her crystalline features catching the artificial light. In this new environment, she seemed somehow more vibrant, her colors deeper and more complex. "I want to see the data vault," she said. I led her through the facility's winding corridors to a heavily reinforced section near the core. Multiple security barriers stood between us and the vault itself, physical barriers augmented by electronic safeguards that would have been nearly impenetrable to anyone without the proper access. For us, with Vashila's technical knowledge flowing through our neural connection, the security measures yielded easily. The final door opened with a pressurized hiss, revealing the vault beyond. "It's perfect," Vashila whispered, her exterior pulsing with excitement. The room contained row upon row of quantum storage units, their capacity vastly exceeding anything available on commercial markets. Specialized interfaces lined the walls, designed for secure access and data manipulation without external connection risks. "You could transfer portions of your archives here," I suggested, watching her explore the space. "Keep the most sensitive information secure while sharing what benefits others." She turned to me, her exterior changing to that golden glow I'd grown to anticipate. "You've given me more than sanctuary, Marcus. You've offered me freedom." Before I could respond, an alert chimed from the console at my belt. I checked the display, my momentary contentment shattering instantly. "We have company." We rushed back to the control room, activating the external sensor array. The display showed a ship approaching our position, sleek, advanced, and bearing the unmistakable markings of the research collective. "How did they find us?" I muttered, fingers flying across the controls to activate what defensive capabilities we had. Vashila's exterior had changed to alarmed red. "The quantum bond," she realized, looking at the crystalline patterns on my hand. "It's emitting a subtle energy signature they can track. Can we block it?" "Not without breaking our connection entirely." Her colors changed with distress at the prospect. I considered our options. The facility's defenses were minimal at best, designed for privacy rather than withstanding concentrated attack. The approaching vessel outgunned us significantly, and the tarnished edge needed repairs before it could outrun anything. "How much time?" 20 minutes until they achieve stable orbit," Vashila reported. "Perhaps another 15 to locate the concealed entrance." Not enough time to flee, barely enough to prepare. I studied the facility schematics, looking for anything we could leverage. "The research labs," I noted, pointing to a section we hadn't yet explored. "What equipment would they have?" Vashila accessed the inventory through our neural connection. Holographic testing arrays, atmospheric modification equipment, prototype cloaking technology that was never completed. A plan began forming in my mind. "Can we access the maintenance tunnels that run beneath the docking bay?" She nodded, understanding beginning to crystallize between us. "When they dock," I said, "they'll expect to find us cornered, vulnerable. Instead they'll find decoys," she finished, her exterior changing to strategic blue, "while we access their vessel from below." Through our neural connection the plan flowed between us with perfect clarity, not just the concept but the technical details, the timing, the contingencies. We worked in seamless coordination, preparing the holographic systems to project convincing duplicates of ourselves while repurposing the atmospheric equipment to create localized sensor disruptions. "We'll need to split up initially," I explained as we made final preparations. "I'll engage the holographic system once they're inside, while you prepare the maintenance tunnel access." Vashila's exterior darkened with concern. "That means temporarily breaking our neural connection." The prospect unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. We'd grown accustomed to the continuous link between us, the gentle awareness of each other's thoughts and feelings. "Only for a few minutes," I assured her, touching the crystalline patterns on my hand. "This connection runs deeper than the continuous neural link." She nodded, determination replacing concern. "I'll be ready." The research collective vessel docked with methodical precision, its airlock sealing against the facility's outer bay door. Through the security feeds, we watched 6 figures disembark, 5 wearing standard collective security uniforms, and 1 in the distinctive attire of a head researcher. "Dr. Lane." Vashila identified the leader, her exterior pulsing with recognition and anger. He supervised my initial examination after capture. The security team moved with practiced efficiency, scanning for threats as they advanced through the docking bay toward the facility interior. Lane followed, his attention fixed on a handheld device that presumably tracked Vashila's energy signature. "They're following the holographic trail," I confirmed, watching them move precisely where we wanted. Time to separate. We stood in the small control room adjacent to the maintenance tunnel entrance. Our preparations complete, but the moment of separation still difficult. "Find me on their ship," I said, squeezing her hand once before letting go. The neural connection diminished as we moved apart, not severed completely but reduced to a faint awareness of each other's presence. I felt the loss immediately. A coldness where her consciousness had complemented mine. I made my way through the shadows to the holographic control station we'd prepared, while Vashila disappeared into the maintenance tunnel that would lead her beneath the docking bay and up into the collective vessel. Through my earpiece, I heard the security team's communications as they approached the research labs where our holographic decoys waited. "Energy signature strongest toward the central section," one reported. 2 distinct readings. One matching the Thresian archive patterns exactly. "Approach with caution, Doctor." Lane's voice replied. "The human is likely armed, and the Thresian's neural defenses remain a concern." I activated the first sequence of holographic projections, subtle movements in adjacent corridors, designed to draw their attention while revealing nothing. The security team split as planned, 2 breaking off to investigate while the rest continued toward our primary decoys. My moment came when the main team reached the research lab doors. I activated the full holographic sequence simultaneously with the atmospheric disruptors, creating a convincing illusion of ourselves barricaded inside while filling the corridor with sensor-confusing particles. The security team reacted exactly as anticipated, establishing a perimeter while Dr. Lane attempted negotiation. "Archivist Vashila," he called through the sealed door. "We know you're inside. The research collective only wishes to ensure your safety and the preservation of your archives." The holographic Vashila responded with words we'd programmed, matching her speech patterns perfectly. "You did not seek preservation when you authorized my abduction and neural dissection." While they focused on the standoff, I slipped away toward the maintenance tunnel, following Vashila's path. Through our faint connection, I sensed she had already reached the collective vessel. The tunnel was narrow and dust-filled, requiring a crawl through uncomfortable spaces. I emerged in a small access shaft leading up into the docked ship, where Vashila waited, her glowing exterior dimmed to avoid detection. "The ship's systems are unlocked," she whispered as I joined her. They left minimal security aboard, confident in their numerical advantage. Together we moved through the vessel's lower deck toward the bridge. Our neural connection strengthened with proximity, information flowing between us once more. I felt Vashila accessing the ship's security protocols, locking down sections remotely to isolate the team members who'd remained aboard. When we reached the bridge, Vashila connected directly to the ship's central computer. Her exterior pulsed with rapid color changes as she processed the vast amount of data suddenly available. "I found it," she said after several tense minutes. "The evidence." She displayed the information on the main view screen, internal communications between the research collective's directors and various powerful entities across human space. The content confirmed our suspicions. The collective had systematically suppressed certain historical records and technological discoveries that would have disrupted existing power structures. Records that existed within Vashila's archives. They wanted to extract this information from me and destroy the original records, she explained, her exterior darkening. Rewrite parts of history to maintain their control over technological development. I studied the communications with growing anger. They've been doing this for decades, and my people either didn't know or chose not to intervene, she added, betrayal evident in her changing colors. A communication alert flashed on the console. Dr. Lane, having realized the deception, was attempting to contact the ship. "Let's invite him aboard," I suggested, a plan forming between us through our neural connection. Vashila nodded, implementing security lockdowns throughout the facility that would funnel the collective team back toward their vessel. When Dr. Lane finally stormed onto the bridge 20 minutes later, his security team was already contained in a sealed section of their own ship. His expression shifted from anger to shock as he found us waiting, the evidence of the collective's corruption displayed prominently on every screen. "This is a misunderstanding," he began, his voice attempting authority despite his clear discomfort. "Is it?" I gestured to the displayed records. "Seems pretty clear to me. You've been burying inconvenient truths for years. You cannot possibly understand the complexities involved," he insisted, turning to Vashila. "Archivist, certain knowledge must be controlled for the greater good. Surely you of all beings understand this principle." Vashila's exterior pulsed with controlled anger. "I understand the difference between protecting knowledge until a species is ready and suppressing it to maintain power imbalances. The archives I carry were meant to be shared when humanity reached appropriate ethical development. And who decides when that moment arrives?" Dr. Lane challenged. "Some alien council with no understanding of human society. Not your organization, certainly," I interjected. "Especially when the knowledge would threaten your funding and influence." Dr. Lane's composure cracked further. "Director Yuna authorized this recovery operation with full board approval. The collective's position is unified." "Not anymore," Vashila replied, indicating another section of data she'd accessed. "I've transmitted evidence of the corruption to every board member simultaneously, along with the historical records proving deliberate suppression. Your unified position is crumbling as we speak." The doctor's face paled. "You have no authority. We have the truth," I interrupted. "And control of your ship. I'd say that gives us all the authority we need right now." Hours later, with the collective team secured in their vessel's brig and an automated distress call program to activate, once we were safely away, Vashila and I stood in the facility's observatory. Through the reinforced dome, we watched twin moons rise over the gas giant's turbulent horizon, casting prismatic light across the barren landscape of our new home. "The facility's systems are fully operational now," I reported, reviewing the final diagnostics. "Life support stable, defenses upgraded, and the data vault prepared for your archives." Vashila stood beside me, her crystalline body reflecting the moon's light in complex patterns. "I've begun the first data transfer," she said. "The most crucial historical records and technological specifications, knowledge that should be preserved independent of my existence." The implications of her words settled between us. For the first time since becoming an archivist, she was sharing her burden, creating redundancy for the precious knowledge she carried. "We'll need to relocate eventually," I acknowledged. "The research collective knows this location now." "But not immediately," she replied. Dr. Lane's transmission to Director Yuna revealed significant fragmentation within their leadership. "They'll be focused on internal matters for some time." Through our neural connection, I sensed her contentment, despite the uncertainty ahead. The weight she had carried alone for centuries was now shared, not just the physical archives but the responsibility they represented. "I've never had a home before," I admitted, watching the alien sky. "Just places to hide." She turned to me, her exterior glowing with that warm golden light that had come to mean everything to me. "Perhaps the difference is not in the place," she suggested, "but in having someone to share it with." Vashila took my hand, our neural connection forming with effortless familiarity now. The crystalline patterns on my skin brightened in response to her touch, our bond visible and tangible. "I love you," she said simply. The words both spoken and felt through our connection, not despite our differences but because of them. In her mind, I saw what she meant. How my human perspective complemented her Threshen knowledge, how my adaptability balanced her structured thinking. Together, we formed something neither of us could be alone. "I love you too," I replied, the words inadequate for the depth of feeling flowing between us. When we kissed, the neural connection blossomed into that now familiar merged consciousness, where boundaries between us dissolved. Her crystalline essence flowed beneath my skin, and something of my humanity transferred to her in return, visible in the increasingly fluid movements of her exterior, the subtle expressions that had become more human while losing none of their Threshen nature. We separated slowly, both changed by the contact yet more ourselves than ever before. Through the observatory dome, the twin moons continued their silent journey across the sky, indifferent to the unprecedented partnership forming beneath their light. A smuggler and an archivist, a human and a Threshen, both loners who had found in each other something neither had imagined possible 2 weeks earlier, not just sanctuary, but home.